Welcome to Theory of Productivity. I'm Jess Brown, and as somebody who has multiple sclerosis and also has to deal with work, I know how important it is to find strategies that are actually effective. So let's do that today and start making some movement. So today I want to discuss the biggest mistake that I personally believe is what's wrong with productivity as far as we talk about it all the time. I've noticed there are patterns of this obsession with time being completely linked with productivity. And so I think that obsessing over time is missing the mark because we're assuming that time is the thing that is most valuable to everybody. And I understand the idea of how, people say time is a precious resource. We can't make more of it. We don't have any control over it. And that's why I actually think that productivity is not so much about managing your time. I actually think it's a lot more about management under time. So we think of time as a constraint rather than a resource. And that's actually my approach to how I get things done. How is it that I run 2 YouTube channels? I also work full time. I find time for doing my own art pieces, my own projects, and I still lounge around a lot. And I also have MS, and so there's a huge amount of energy that I have to allocate that it is a lot harder than it used to be. So I have all of these constraints, and I think that thinking of them as constraints is the easier way to actually create movement. At least for me, it has been. And that's why I do think of time more as a constraint rather than a resource, because I'm fully aware I may not be able to do something tomorrow or in 4 years. I could be I could be brain dead, essentially, because I've felt that in my MS attack. When I was first diagnosed, I was almost useless as far as being able to do my job as a developer. So I have thought about time and its relationship with me and also my productivity a lot. The circumstances that I have created a different perspective, is a little bit contrarian to the other perspectives out there that have kind of unified on this whole time is money. We box it up and plan it out all the time. That becomes productivity. So I understand where they're coming from. That's how I used to think. And then when the MS entered my life, I had to do a complete strategy shift. So in case you are not familiar with my story, I used to be hardcore into the hustle culture idea. I was fully employed, and I also was running a business on the side, trying to do some freelance design and development work. I find out that I'm going to be laid off, and so I do what everybody else does. I take a week off, right? Try to cash out as many as you can of those PTO hours. And so I come back and then find out that they actually wanted to keep me on for 2 more months, just because I was one of the highest performing workers. Like I really, and I have the stats, I was doing twice as much as the rest of my team. And I was really mad about this. I don't think that's a wise decision to tell somebody you're getting laid off on XYZ date and then extend it. Although I was really appreciative of it because of what happened just a few days after this news. So I'm still losing my job, and I'm angry, and I guess I wanted to be the better person. And so I was like, fine, I will actually, not only will I, stick around for these 2 months, I'm going to do the same level and standard and quality of work that you're used to seeing, even though you are taking the job from me. And then I come home at the end of that week, and I'm starting to experience a lot of weird sensations in my body. Like I was feeling numb on my left arm, so a little bit on my back. Just something was off. And the next day, that Saturday, I was really in a bad spot. Fatigue was starting to creep in over the course of the afternoon. Soon it was like I could barely keep my eyes open, even though I wasn't sleepy. Like, it wasn't time to be tired. And I'm in my 20s, I'm supposed to be in my peak physical performance age. I woke up on Sunday and I was having a lot of hard time just navigating my house. I'm seeing these walls and I can't avoid them. I run into them. So I'm walking down the hall, I run into the wall, and I'm like, what the heck? Why can't I just, something is wrong. And eventually I decided that I needed to go to the ER. They do an MRI, and I come home with the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, or MS. So suddenly I'm going from high achiever, do everything, high quality, like really just over the top productivity. Like it was my obsession. That was where my value came from. And it was all taken away from me over the weekend. So I couldn't go to work because I couldn't even drive. I mean, it would be unsafe and absolutely irresponsible if I did try to drive at that time, because my coordination was off. Everything was off. I couldn't think straight. I had this crazy mental fog that impeded my ability to do complex tasks like programming, which is what I do in my career, right? So, and one of the worst parts of this was also that whole, I had just motivated myself to give my 100% effort to a company that had betrayed me, and now my body has betrayed me. And so I spent the next 2 months, I only survived that job because I had happened to automate some things in my free time prior to that. And I was able to run those automations instead of actually doing the work manually. And that saved me. That's the only reason why I was able to complete any work during those last 2 months. So unfortunately, the company did not get my 100%. They still got a pretty good amount of work done just through my automations, but it was nothing like what it used to. So it looked really bad. So I already felt like this guilt of like, I'm not doing this. I'm not lying. This is this is a legitimate emergency, health emergency, and so there's all of that wrapped up into this. And then also I have my own existential crisis. What is value? What is the value of a human life that is not productive? Because I felt worthless. I felt like, I can't do anything. I can't do my job like I used to. Therefore, I have zero value. And that's not a great place. It's not a good place at all to be mentally. And I'll be frank here, I was suicidal. And you know what? That experience, though, has totally changed my understanding of time. What does the future mean? Nothing to me. It means literally nothing. I no longer pretend like I can make a 5-year plan. I no longer have large, lofty ideas of how I want my future to be, my career, I will do these things and then blah, 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 get to this position. None of that. I have a target. I have aspirations, but everything I do is based on right now, because I know what's happening right now. I feel good right now. And I know that tomorrow I don't have any promises. And so that to me tells me that time is no longer a resource. It really is a constraint for me. What can I do right now? I don't want to spend my life pushing certain things off into the future that are important. Obviously, if it's not important, I can push it off. There's still that kind of productivity strategy or tactic of, can I do it in this 2 minutes? I'll do it right now. Okay, I'll do that. And then I'll push off, this would be a nice to have, but I need to do some other higher priority things. Obviously, those are still in play. But no longer am I thinking about how am I going to plan my week. That's for all of those appointments, doctor's appointments, blah, 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 things that I have to take care of. Those come to me and I place them where they are. And then I work around them. And I'm no longer obsessed with time as a resource because I know I don't have a promise of it. So if we think of it like an index card, I don't know if you had the same experience, but sometimes my math teacher for calculus would allow us to bring one index card, just the 3x5 index card. We were able to put the notes, any amount of notes that we want, as long as it fits on, one side or both sides, I can't remember, of this index card. Now, you could think of time as being this index card. I have one index card to represent one day. And if you're like me as a high school student, you're like, okay, I'll write everything I possibly can. I'll write as small as possible. I'm going to cram absolutely everything that I can onto this tiny little sheet of paper. And it's not going to be super readable. It's going to be really hard to find things. And eventually it's going to be totally useless. Sure, I can get a new card every day and I can cram it full of stuff. That is not productivity. And I think that's the mindset, or that's what this mindset creates is, let's plan out our day detail by detail. I'm going to do 10 minutes and finish this task. The next 17 minutes is going to be this, blah, 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 all the way through all of my to-do list. Life does not work that way, at least for me. If that works for you, that's great. But I have noticed that is not a sustainable strategy to increase your value, to increase the products that you are trying to create, or to make movement on those bigger pieces, the big projects that you really want to get out there. So if I were to wrap all of this up, the biggest thing that I took away from my experience of MS, getting laid off at essentially the same time, and my relationship with time and productivity is that we don't want to stuff our index card totally full. If we want to add the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of my notes were completely useless to me when I was taking that calculus test. And 20% of those may have been used, but maybe they weren't the highest quality either. The Pareto principle is definitely pretty generous, especially when we're talking about my calculus notes. But I think the breakdown is very similar to how we work throughout the day. And that's why no longer is my strategy to plan out every inch of the day, every minute, every hour. Instead, I'm trying to cut out more. And this is something that people talk about a lot, but it really is super important. The effectiveness of your productivity system, your productivity habits, is absolutely going to be defined by your ability to cut out what is unnecessary. And that's been something that's been huge to help me separate time from productivity, because you can waste a ton of time on really great stuff, but it's not the stuff that makes the motion, doesn't make movement. And you can do it really well. Maybe you're not even spending that much time. Maybe it's 10 minutes and you get these reports and you do all this stuff. You're looking at your analytics and it doesn't actually do anything, but it feels like it. And that's the other thing, is there's this illusion of time when you spend your time really well. There can be an illusion that you're actually making progress when you're not. And that's why, ultimately, what I think productivity is about is, what is your measuring stick? What matters to you? What is the measurement of value that is actually going to impact whatever you're trying to do? Is it trying to be the best employee ever? Is it trying to create your own business, do YouTube, do your own projects? Whatever that is, your productivity is going to be different depending on your values, the values of the people that are impacted or have maybe a stake in that game, whatever that is. Maybe that's your manager, maybe that's your customers. those things play together. They come together and they influence each other. And so productivity is not just about time. And I think it's an absolute mistake to assume that everything about productivity is about time. So we'll keep on exploring this because I am sure that I'm wrong in a lot of things. I am still learning, but I am really trying to put forth some different ideas out there that I hope can help people to feel accomplished and actually get things done. So like both of them together. And I also want to help people with disabilities like myself, where we just can't do certain things. There is only energy is even less than my time. If we're talking as time as a resource, my energy can't compete. The energy doesn't even fill the amount of time that I have. So how do I manage that? And that's why I come back to this idea of management under time, management around time. Time is just the constraint that is constantly flowing through us. It flows. We have no control over it. Other people influence what we can do with our time. I don't have any promise of a future. I don't have a promise of tomorrow. I wake up and I think, I'm feeling pretty good today. Let's get some stuff done. Or I feel awful today. I'm going to take care of myself. That's what's important today. And all of the things that I do compound over time. That's ultimately what I want, is for things I don't want more time. I want the things that I'm doing to work together over time. Time is not something I'm trying to manage. It's not something I'm trying to control, because ultimately I don't have any control over it. And so being able to play as a human with waxing and waning energy levels, focus, ability to focus, things that just happen that your body takes over. Even if you are maybe new to a disability, or maybe you're noticing that the way that you've been grinding and hustling is actually becoming a detriment to you. That's what I'm hoping to do with this podcast, is to be able to present different ways of thinking about productivity, different strategies for productivity, and different ways that we can actually not only feel accomplished, but actually accomplish something. Thanks so much for joining me. Keep up the momentum. Until next time on Theory of Productivity.